This episode is sponsored by Team Builder, yet another company that's doing great things for the first responder community. As a strength and conditioning coach myself who also trains tactical athletes, dissemination of wellness information is one of the biggest challenges. Now, Team Builder is the premier strength and conditioning software for tactical athletes, and there are several features that really impress me. Firstly, there is a full exercise library, so you, the personal trainer, does not have to create that within your own department. Secondly, you can send out programming, but also individualize, which I love. So you blanket program for everyone. Now you can tweak based on someone's injury, someone's need to maybe drop some body composition, rather than having to write a program for every single person on their own. Team Builder also allows you to build custom questionnaires to collate health and wellness data. It integrates with wearables. And I think one of the most important things is obviously it tracks. To me, it's imperative that we as a profession start tracking our people from day one and then over the full span of their career, therefore catching potential wellness issues and injuries before they happen. Now, if you want to try Team Builder, they are offering you, the audience of the Behind the Shield podcast, a free 14-day trial to experience all of the features. And if you want to take a deeper dive into Team Builder, listen to episode 1032 with Melissa Mercado, or go to teambuilder.com. And I'll spell that to you because it's not as you'd think, teambuildr.com. Welcome to the Behind the Shield podcast. As always, my name's James Gearing, and this week it is my absolute honor to welcome on the show former neo-Nazi, hockey coach, and the author of Autobiography of a Recovering Skinhead, Frank Meeink. Now, in this conversation, we discuss a host of topics, from his turbulent childhood, the unique journey that took him into the world of white supremacy, the shared humanity that opened his eyes, his powerful recovery story, the power of mentorship, and so much more. Now, before we get to this incredible conversation, as I say every week, please just take a moment. Go to whichever app you listen to this on, subscribe to the show, leave feedback, and leave a rating. Every single 5-star rating truly does elevate this podcast, therefore making it easier for others to find. And this is a free library of well over 1,200 episodes now. So all I ask in return is that you help share these incredible men and women's stories so I can get them to every single person on planet Earth who needs to hear them. So with that being said, I introduce to you Frank Meeink. Enjoy. Well, Frank, I want to start by saying thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the Behind the Shield podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So where on planet Earth are we finding you this afternoon?
I'm in Southern California now. Just moved to like our first week in our new place. So
beautiful. Which you don't tell me exactly, but which area roughly are you in within California?
Like Los Angeles, like LA area.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, when I worked for Anaheim, I lived up in Burbank for the first, it was a couple of years, and then moved down to Huntington Beach. So yeah, beautiful place.
Yeah, place is amazing.
Well, I would love to start at the very beginning of your journey. So tell me where you were born, and tell me a little bit about your family dynamic, what your parents did, how many siblings.
Yeah, so it's kind of all over the place. So I was the only child of my mom and dad. No, they didn't have others besides me. My parents were young, drunken, drug addict kids, and they wound up getting together. And my mom liked the bad boy, and my dad was the bad boy. My dad was the Italian. He's part of the Irish, but he was an Italian kid looking. 1970s Rocky Balboa type bad boy. And that's what my mom liked. So anyhow, after just a short time after they had me, then they broke up. And my dad lived in one neighborhood, my mom lived in another, and I just got past. I think my mom took care of me most of my younger years. Um, my dad really never took care of me at all. I barely ever seen the guy. And then I moved in with him when I was 13. My mom wound up getting remarried to a guy who was a neighborhood. And again, these are rough little neighborhoods, like real rough, and a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, and she married one of those guys, and he, liked to smack the crap out of me. And anyhow, I wound up moving with my dad when I was about 13. I moved, and he lived up in a black neighborhood, mostly black neighborhood. Used to be a white neighborhood. My dad's family used to live there, and it had changed over the years to a black neighborhood. And my dad was, still hung out, still lived there. And so I moved, and my dad had a bar, like a little tavern. It was known as his spot. He didn't own it, but it was kind of like my dad's bar, and he was always there. And he worked there and stuff. Anyway, when I moved in with him, man, I wound up just having to go to this all black school and fist fought a lot of trouble. Middle of the school year, new kid, white kid, athletic kid, punk rocky, alternative kid. So just a ball of a mess. And so that's kind of how I was raised. My parents wound up having kids with other people, and having families with other people, and went on. And so I was just kind of a throwaway kid, kind of. So.
And this was in Philadelphia?
This is in Philly, all in Philly. Yep. So my mom's in South Philly. My dad was up in Southwest Philly.
So firstly, talk to me about, that you're a young boy still. You're, vulnerable in this household where there's domestic violence. When you reflect back now, what impact did that have on you in those formative years?
I mean, my idea of violence is something that's different than other human beings, and there's other human beings that are like me. I'm not special, or I'm not that big of a thug. I just know other people that are like me too, but that for one, violence could be first answer. There's some, just, and then also it just also taught me that so here, I'll give you a good example. This is a great example. So I grew up around my dad's bar, where there was these men that hung out in the bar all day. Now this is like a thug. This is a bar that, the ones you see, the scary ones in the movies, man, like the Dive and the Hood. It's all roofers, guys that are roofers and longshoremen. So you tell me what type of clientele we're messing around with here, right? And drug dealers. That's who the clientele are in the bar. And anyhow, I grew up in that little bar, and as a little kid, I run around and I pick up the phone, and I was a little kid. This is a landline. This is the 80s, right? I would pick up a landline, Terry's Tavern, and it'd be this angry woman. Hey, is Michael there? Is Michael there? And little Frankie, they knew it was me. My dad was Big Frankie. I'm little Frankie. Is Michael there? Put Michael on the phone. And I look, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, is Michael here? Now I'm looking right at Michael. I know Michael's in the bar. I'm looking right at him. I'm like, is Michael here? And Michael go, I'm not here. And I go, I'm sorry, Michael's not here right now. And then she'd be like, yeah, you tell him, and you better tell him to do this when he gets home, and not spend the food stamps. And I say, I'll tell him when he gets here. Okay. And I hang up the phone, and then Michael give me $1 for not telling him, his wife, that he was there. And that is what I thought a man was. For a long time, I thought that was the coolest thing. I thought that was because everyone thought that was so cool, in the bar. And I thought that's what a man was. So I didn't have the best role models in having, a good spiritual life. I've seen men like this who, so anyhow, that's kind of how the upbringing brought me to who I am.
Well, it's interesting because obviously, as we're talking here now, you're a very different man, adult, but there's so many people that ended up in the military, ended up in the first responder professions that had very similar backgrounds, but there was a
Mhm.
positive or a few positive role models, and it steered them at that crossroads down a path of service. Now they still carried their trauma and they still had work to do and weren't suddenly angels by any means, but it was a healing
Yeah.
journey for them. And I think this is one thing that really irks me about this judgmental element of, addiction, of gang membership, of all these things is we're all the same kids on this path. But if you didn't have that
Mhm.
positive mentor, if the mentors in your community were gangbangers or dealers or bikers or, negative bikers, I'm not saying everyone on a bike is like that, it can send you down
No.
the other path and you're literally the product of your environment. So, hearing the dynamic that you had at home and then who your role models were at that time, it's not surprising that a young Frank found himself going down a different direction than maybe a parallel Frank that had a history teacher and a gym teacher that steered him towards the Marines
Uh-huh.
or, some other more positive outlet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. There's, I don't, it's hard for me to say that the system let me down, I remember, especially during the years with my stepdad when he first moved in and things were really rough. I was always in the school like counselor's office, and I didn't know why. I wasn't asking to go there. I would just be in class, and then the counselor come and get me, right? And now I look back on it, I'm like, man, I must have been really doing some crazy stuff, and I didn't even, like I just didn't even know it. Like, um, it's one of those things, and you probably notice in this in your profession, there's like that fake crazy, there's the guy that tells you how crazy he is, rah, 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 and then there's the guy that's yelling about pancakes on the side of the road. You know what I mean? It's like there's a real, and I don't mean to label people crazy like that, but there's, I always call people the fake crazy, the ones that tells you how crazy he is, and it's like, okay, buddy, you're crazy. So, um, yeah. So anyway, yeah, I'm much different human being today, much different human being today.
So you find yourself moving in with your dad. You're in a different kind of ethnicity now as far as a lot of the people that you're at school with. Walk me down that path. What does that look like? First, you're kind of a transplant in that school. Secondly, in arguably some of the more divisive times, you're a different pigeonhole group, if you like, than some of the kids that you're going to
Mhm.
school with. So, what did you encounter personally, and then how did that lead you towards a dislike of a certain group?
Yeah, well, growing up my whole life, especially in my mom's neighborhood, before my dad's neighborhood, my mom's neighborhood, a very Irish Catholic, South Philly neighborhood, very Irish Catholic. So there was Italian neighborhoods that were just 2 blocks away from us that we never even talked to unless we had to like work or go to school with them. Like, and we hated them and they hated us. And then there was a black neighborhood that was right on the other side of us, and the three of us all hated each other and talked bad about each other, and then there was a Cambodian neighborhood over on the other side, and we all talked bad about them, and they were weird, so and everyone did that. We all did that to each other. So there was like this what I would call like a neighborhood racism. Just they're different than us. We're better than they are, and we'd find any reason why. Right? That's a big deal. So that's how I was raised with that type of neighborhood racism. Even though I'm part Irish and part Italian, that I know of at the time, I'm part Irish, part Italian. So anyhow, moving up with going from my mom's neighborhood to my dad's neighborhood. Now I'm the minority, and my school and back in my mom. Sorry to go back to my mom's neighborhood. That school I went to there was very diverse. It was like Italian kids, Irish kids, black kids, Puerto Rican kids. It had Asian. It had a little bit of sprinkling of everybody. Um, Probably, yeah. So anyway, so I go up to my dad's neighborhood and I go to this new school, and it's not that way at all. Like there's like 20 of us, like not 20% white kids, just 20 white kids, I think. And I just have to be this new one that comes in, and again, it's middle of the school year. I'm not giving people an out, but this is textbook. This guy's going to get picked on, or someone's going to test him, because I moved there in the middle of the school year, punk rocker, skater, punk rocky kid, super athletic, and was always very good at sports everywhere I went, and I'm just naturally an athlete, and played games my whole life. So anyhow, and then, just had this outsider attitude thing, which made me more prevalent to people saying things, and me saying stuff back, because I have a issue with not running my mouth back, which has got me in trouble a lot in my life, by the way. So anyhow, moving that new school, it's just a lot of fights, a lot of like extra comments. If I was fist fighting with one kid and I started to get the best of them, I was going to get sucker punched from somebody else for getting the best of that kid. I mean, like all that stuff was, but I played sports, and the sports teams I was on in the all black school were doing good that I was on, and I was contributing to their school. So anyway.
Well, speaking of sports, what were you playing?
That school I played on their softball, baseball team. That was an all black baseball team for like 5 years, and they had like won 2 championships. And now I come on the team, so I'm this new guy. I'm the reverse Jackie Robinson. Let me put it that way. All right, to this team, and then we did wind up winning a championship again, and I was a good contributor to the reasons why we won. So I was the reason why they won it the third year in a row, or something like that. So, anyhow, that was that, and I played basketball and I played volleyball. They had a cool little volleyball team.
How were you received within those sports versus in general in the school? Because as I've said this on many interviews that have kind of been the last 2 weeks or so, we're in the middle of the Football World Cup at the moment, and you're seeing all these nations that have been told some of them need to hate each other, and you watch the players on the pitch and you watch the fans in the stands, and apart from some minor incidents, overall there's a shared love of the sport, and this is shared realization that we're all basically the same kind of person. Some live in Mexico, some live in South Africa, some live in the UK, but they all are the same kind of human, and they're all brought together with this. I saw with my son when he did the track team, super diverse team, and these kids were so amazing, cheering each other on. It was a real cohesive team, regardless of ethnicity or religion or whatever. So I've seen how sometimes sports can bring a team together, or not sometimes, often can bring a team together, and all of a sudden colors and creeds just don't matter anymore. What did you see in your experience in the sport versus generally in the school itself?
Well, what's funny is, after a while, there would be some kids that didn't like that I joined the team for whatever reason. And there's also a little bit of sports jealous. And to be honest, I got the shortstop job, which is like the coveted position. So I come in and I take the coveted position, But on top, I can tell you that when you win games with each other and you dig deep with each other to win a game, you start putting all that stuff to the side. And I just remember that team used to do that a lot. I think we almost went like undefeated the whole season. It was crazy. But we like had to come from behind a bunch of times, and that type of stuff always bonds people. And I know we're not later on in my story, but eventually I work in sports, was teaching hockey, coaching hockey, and try and get more Black and Latino kids and white kids, lower income white kids, to play the game. I did that for years because of that experience, knowing that sports is like this camaraderie that will eventually knock down racism, and so.
Absolutely. And we're seeing it, like I said, we're seeing it. These are 2 examples in the World Cup, and we're also seeing how many incredible teams from around the world are responding. Sadly, I think they're going home now, but responded to the Venezuela earthquake, all over the States, all over Central and South America. You've got European teams, you've got places from everywhere coming because humans are in trouble and they want to help. And they're not asking, hey, are you a Muslim, before they start cutting them out. They're just going to help people, So there's so many beautiful examples out there that are right in front of our face.
All the time. I love, that's the other thing with, and I love that America, that we're always in the news around the world just because of what our climate and what's going on, right? But I love that you hear so many people come and say they like loved Americans and they love the way we were treated. I love Philadelphia, my hometown, my old hometown. Got rave reviews from all the cities and countries. And anyway, that I love that we got to show who we are as people because we are good people. And like I like to try to tell people a lot, especially my people that aren't locals. I say things like, we're not the bad guys you all think we are, but we're not the good guys that we think we are neither. Like that's like an understanding we need to come to, So when you say that to them, it's like that we understand we got some issues here, but we're not the bad people. Like we're good people and we do care about one another. And we're a very generous country and, donations. And so anyway, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Well, you mentioned about being a skater kid before we get into some of the incidents that led you down the kind of white supremacist route. Regardless of all that, what were your career aspirations? What were you dreaming of becoming, if anything, when you were in your teens?
So this is funny. This is going to be funny. But when I was like a young teenager, like 12, and I had some dreams, I used to go down to the Jersey Shore every summer. If you live in Philly, that's what you do. You go to the Jersey Shore. And my dream was I wanted to live at the Jersey Shore year round because I knew in the summer it was wild down there. And then in the winter it was dead. It was like, because everyone went back to Philly. Anyway, and I wanted to like live there year round, and I wanted to be a New Jersey State Trooper. So that was going to be my goal. So before I got into the neo-Nazis. So yeah, so that was what I wanted to do. Yeah.
You say it's funny because I've had this conversation on here so many times. So many of us that found ourselves in the military, in the first responder professions, have been through stuff when we were younger. And there's a spectrum of things from, sexual abuse to domestic violence to one or both parents leaving to one or both parents being there and neither of them actually wanted the kid. There's you've seen yourself, there's so many backstories, but they are driven subconsciously usually at that point to want to make the world better, to wear a certain armor, to be the hero in someone's story. And it's all coming from a good place. But that ACEs, that adverse childhood experience score, we have on average about a 6. Most incarcerated men and women have on average about a 6. So again, there's probably a lot of people that found themselves behind bars that probably dreamt of being a soldier, a firefighter, a cop. But sadly, their journey took them to a place that derailed them from that. But that same trauma can be used in such a positive way, again, if you have these good role models, and this is what you're doing with the hockey program, that can get to that child before they're dragged the wrong direction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a huge, so many people. So as you led up to that, I become a neo-Nazi after I get out of that school in my dad's neighborhood and with all that. It was one of those things where it was when I look deep inside myself and I think like, why did I get into these things? There's a lot of reasons, but one of the first reasons is good parenting. Good parenting. If I would have had parents who would have said, look, you matter, you count in this world, we love you. How so good parenting. And then if that's not there, and I can tell you now that I look back on it, there were aunts and uncles that were trying to come in and help out a little bit. Sometimes it might have been already a little bit too late. I was so deep involved in this white supremacist world that nothing was getting me out, like nothing. There was a moment anyway, because I was that radicalized. So, but good parenting, and then when I look back on the stuff about like, why did I get into these type of groups? it's the truth of it all. I mean, because I had to learn to digest some truth about myself to realize why I would do such things. Because I'm also later on become it's a drug addict, alcoholic now. So I had to really learn some truths about myself about why I made those decisions. And it was just very low self-esteem and low self-worth, like things that I didn't mean to be that way. I really didn't. I thought I was being a good guy, even when I was a neo-Nazi. Like, I thought I was defending this white race and defending the future white of America because I grew up in the hood, and I was like, I don't want this to become this. And I was broken and thought that this gave me purpose and meaning and reason. So.
Yeah. And it's the same thing that sends us into first response. You want to be part of a tribe. You want to be, seen like you have some value in the world. You want to be around mentors. So you hear the same thing, with the Crips and the Bloods and MS-13, and then the radicalized Islamic extremists. And, you've got these broken young men that don't have any direction, and that's who they deliberately prey upon. It's a business model for a lot of these groups.
Yeah. And the sad thing is that they have a lot of clientele, right? There's a lot of kids out there with need, a lot of kids, if you ever listen, and because now in my life I listen, I try not to be a know-it-all. What's the one thing a know-it-all doesn't know is that the one thing a know-it-all doesn't know is that nobody likes a know-it-all, right? And so today, man, when I get to listen, and I listen to a lot of the other activists in my world, and this is all about education. That's one of the things that's truly going to get us out of this trouble and the troubles that we're in is like early childhood development, massive early childhood development. I know we're two guys preaching to the choir right now, but I mean, it's really is like the truest solution, and we just won't ever do it. It's the craziest thing, because then we get kids in early childhood development. We get to see early onsets of mental illnesses and learning disability. I mean, it's like this huge fix, and it's like we just won't do that. So anyway, I think go too much down that road, but it's the truth.
Well, this is what excites me about our generation, because we grew up with parents that never had this conversation at all, and that was just the time, so it was suck it up, or be the toughest guy in the neighborhood, or whatever the thing was. And then our children are growing up in this environment, all dangerously almost too far, where everything's offensive, and you can't talk about anything, and censor this and take these books out, and that's dangerous as well. That's the pendulum has swung the other way. And so right. I've always said that Gen X, our generation, we got one foot either side of the line. So we're the ones that have to do the healing, because if we do the healing and we look at the mistakes that were made, by our parents, and they did the best with what they did, but, we have to forgive them, but we still have to heal, that we can then impart that wisdom to our children, hopefully stop the dominoes falling too far on them. Yep. But then also the other way, then we can help our parents heal if we happen to have them in our life. And it may be, you may help them 10%, but whatever. So we are that domino. I really believe that. Generation X is that domino, because the reason why these, say, we need parents and it's these broken homes. It's like, but why do you think the homes are broken? Because we've got a mental health crisis. We've got an addiction crisis. We've got a poverty crisis. And it's not that you can snap your fingers and everyone's out of jail and they're great parents again. You have to stop this generational trauma.
Yep. Absolutely. And for the people that are listening, man, I don't know if people know the numbers, because I think if more people knew the numbers, they would know why the work that I do today. It's this crazy thing where America's only 5% of the world population. America's only 5% of the world population. And half of that, a little bit more than half of this country is women. It's about a 50-50 split. There's a little bit more women than there are men, just in the fact that men do more dumb things and we die a little bit quick. And we commit suicide a little bit more. So that's not funny. But anyway, it's true. But when you look at the mass incarceration, so women are 2.5% of the world's population in America. But when you look at our mass incarceration, we're 30% of the world's women's prison population. Like, that's not working. That doesn't work. It doesn't work for me as an American. I find that horrifying and horrific. And, I can get very political or I can get into our rights, but the First Amendment says that I have the right to have any religion I want and speak for my religion anyway. So it's the whole First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press. What else we have in there? The First Amendment has 5 elements. It's freedom of press, religion, gathering, petitioning, and so 5 of them. Yeah. And so, right. Anyway, and so the right of religion. Speech. It's speech, religion, media, the right of the press, the right to petition, and the right to gather. That's your 5. Yeah. So anyway, there you go. And so the right to my religion is that I have a strong belief in God, and my God does not allow. In fact, he's really against like mass incarceration. The God I serve, anyway. You serve you. I don't tell anyone else how to serve their God. That's none of my business today. The God I serve today is very much not for mass incarceration, and it's in the books. It's in the book. It's a bunch of prophets came to us about this type of stuff before. It's pretty much written in the books that we don't want to mistreat the poor, and especially have private prisons. And I don't think the God I serve likes that stuff. So that's my job today, Nick, is to talk about that stuff. Coming far from being a neo-Nazi, right, at one time. So.
Well, I want to return to the prisons when we get to that point, but let's talk about your journey into the neo-Nazi movement in the first place. I know there was an incident with a gang, so kind of walk me through how you found yourself from, a school kid that happened to be ethnically different than a lot of the kids in the school to joining that particular extremist group.
Yeah, so the summer I get out of the city, my dad's neck of the woods. I just had an opportunity to go up to where my cousin lived, which is like the Chester County, Bucks County, Chester County, Lancaster County typey area. So, and they live up there, and there's a lot of Amish people. And so my cousins were not Amish. They were my cousins. They were from South Philly. They just happened to move a few years earlier, just 1 or 2 years earlier, something like that. And anyway, I used to go up there to keep my cousins company because they were sad that they left South Philly, where all of our cousins lived in the same neighborhood. We all lived literally right around the corner from each other. Like, you could yell from our houses, we could hear each other, that type of neighborhood. So I would go up there, and I was going to spend the summer up there. And my cousin who lived up there was about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years older than me. So I looked up to him, thought he was cool. He's just older cousin, did cool things, punk rock stuff, skateboarding stuff. So I couldn't wait to go hang out with him that summer. And I liked hanging up there in the farm areas. It got me out of the city. I mean, it was amazing up there. You run for creeks and cow beds, and it's crazy. It was amazing. So anyway, I go up there in that summer, and he wasn't a skateboarder punk rocker anymore. He was this neo-Nazi white supremacist. And when he got home and we started talking, and he started talking about race stuff, I know what he's talking about because I fight with black kids in my neighborhood. I fight with the other kids in my mom's neighborhood. We all kind of fall with each other. And, so okay. And he starts, he just talk about Hitler, and I'm like, that kind of doesn't do good for me. You know what I mean? I grew up, my grandfathers fought in the big war, or fought in and around the big war, and everything I've ever been taught was this is the bad guy. And my cousin and his friends go to tell me that he's just considered the bad guy because he lost the war, but he was fighting for the white race. And I'm like, okay, but so they only tell the bad stuff for the bad. That's what they're telling me. And I'm like, okay. And then and so as I started to hang around these guys, I would notice they would talk these farm boys, and they weren't Amish skinheads. These weren't like Amish Nazis. These were white people that lived in the Amish communities. Their children were becoming white supremacists. And so anyway, I just hung out with these guys, and when they talked about black people, I could tell they had no idea what they were talking about. And I just could tell, like, they don't see black people. Like, they were saying very far-fetched things where I'm like, or they were just saying like stupid little thing. I don't know. I could just tell. And so my cousin one or two times had said to these guys, whenever they were talking about black people, he would say, "Yo, you should ask my cousin. My cousin lives one of the worst neighborhoods in the city." And, these guys would give me attention because they would start asking me, "Hey, what's it like?" Now, they would ask me what's it like to be on a train full of black people. Like, that's what they, and that they experienced that maybe once. They went to the city and they experienced that once. And they're like, "Is it like that every day?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's what it's like every day." And what that did to me was, look, when I walked in my parents' home, my mom or my dad's, or with their step parents, and I had a black eye or I had a trophy, my parents didn't say, "Hey, son, how'd you get that?" They just did. I would walk right by them. Like, I swear, it's just who my parents were. It's their parent. They never said like, "Hey, are you okay? Are you all right today? Is everything good?" I never heard those questions from my parents. So when these neo-Nazis are telling me, "Hey, what's it like to grow up around black people?" in whatever way that came into my head, that was awesome, because someone was finally asking me about my life. To me, that's what it felt like. They're like, "Hey, how's life?" Even though they're saying about black people, but it's like, so I'm getting to say like, "Yo, I go to an all-black school. My school sucks. This is brutal. I don't want to go home, those type of things." And so, yeah. So that was like when I first started hanging out with these guys, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And one more thing is, I enjoyed that people feared them. When I would go places with all these neo-Nazis and we go to like nightclubs and punk rock clubs, everyone feared them. Everyone didn't want to be around. These guys would look crazy. And I still had like hair at the time I didn't shave yet. And I could look across the bar and I could see people were scared of these guys. And I love that. I love that. Because up until that point in my life, I'm a 14-year-old athletic, somewhat tough kid, but deep down inside, I stopped growing once my stepdad moved in. I'm like an 8-year-old with and I fear everything. I feared my parents and their neglect. I feared my step parents and their abuse and neglect. I feared my school that I was going to. It was all black and I was fist fighting with kids. I mean, I feared if I was sometimes going to have enough food to eat. Now someone fears me because I'm with these guys. I like that. I got to be honest. I like that. So that was when I first started really hanging out with this group.
When you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like, safety is the first thing, even before, food or anything else, because you can't eat if someone's trying to kill you. So you got to get to somewhere safe first before you can then start addressing the other things. And I've had this in a different way. I didn't grow up around, domestic violence. There was an element of it, but not to the level that you were exposed to. But I've been a martial artist my whole life. I'm 52 years old now. I've done, everything from taekwondo to boxing to kickboxing to jiu-jitsu. And I can tell you that I still now walk around thinking that basically everyone could kick my ass. And the reality is some of them absolutely could, but there's a lot that probably couldn't. But it's the same thing, because that scared little boy is still in there. And it's not to the point where it's crippling, but that imposter syndrome, that, wanting to feel safe, still lives rent-free in my head at 52 years old. And that's the thing that drives a lot of kids. And you hear the origin story of a lot of these gangs was just, firstly, just feeling safe in a neighborhood where they were different. So, whether you're, again, a firefighter or a gang member, you see the same kind of, on-ramp to either of those, and then again the split happens on whether you had a good mentor or a bad mentor. But the DNA inside is leading you for the same reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, man. So that was when I first started to join these hang out with these neo-Nazi groups and take on this ideology that, I mean, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. It really is. And for me to believe that because of the color of my skin, I'm better than another human being on this planet, just because of this reason alone, is moronic. It is. It's an absolute. And I'm sorry if you might have some people in your audience that still have, feelings like this. But I'm telling you, I come to the conclusion, and I was very, very into that my race made me better, or not even that other people's races made them not as good as mine. I think it's and you'll hear it a lot in people in the world. Like they're just kind of like, I hate all black people except for John, because I work with John. He's cool. And Maurice, because we went to school. And me and Maurice, we played basketball together. Me and Maurice were real cool. And, I like him. He's not like the other ones that I think about. Right. And it's this exception for our hate. Right. Like we all have these exceptions. Oh, I hate all those people. I hate all the Mexicans. They're all like this. Oh, except for Juan, because I work with Juan, and his children and my children get along great. And Hector's an amazing human being in our lives and goes to church with us. And so not him, but all the rest of them are that way. Right. And so that's what a racism is. You make exceptions for your judgments and hates. So anyway, and I was so fully involved in that movement. I can't tell you. I lived in safe houses for years, traveled around to different compounds, didn't go to high school. Like I dropped out of high school and was just moved and lived in neo-Nazi compounds all around the country, and was on TV a bunch of times for the white supremacist movement in the late 80s, early 90s. You'll see a bunch of documentaries and a bunch of crazy things. So, I was very active in that movement.
When you look at a lot of these gangs, there initially seems to be this purpose, but then you take a deeper dive, and I had a lot of undercover CIA, law enforcement people on that were in the Hells Angels, that were in some of these other ones, and very soon after the initial thing that attracts people, you realize that behind the scenes, actually, there's drug. Selling drugs and some of these other things, and it's a business, and there's a lot of that going on. As you got a little deeper into this, was it always about this mission to make Caucasians the superior race, or did you start to see that actually there was a pursuit of money and power beneath this kind of facade that was this kind of Caucasian mission?
Yeah. No, the people I was running with, there wasn't a lot of. I mean, I ran with names that people that if anyone knows the movement will be like, oh, okay, yeah. But there wasn't like a real financial gain for majority of people. It was like majority of the people were like, yeah, I want a race war. Like that's all they wanted. I just want a race war. And we had guys in our crews that were robbing banks, and like I went to prison for kidnapping people. I mean, we weren't. So, and it was all like, for a living, because we needed to make a living and go to different rallies. And we used to, but other than that, it was, a lot of our stuff came from guns. I was, if you can get guns and sell guns, stolen guns, not stolen guns, that was a big industry. So.
You mentioned kidnapping. Where would you consider some of the darkest places that you found yourself during that time?
Oh yeah, I mean, throughout that time, if I have any regrets, it is definitely the violence I put on other human beings. I had no right to put my hands on another human being the way I did, like like that. And violence, it's just physical violence, no essay stuff, nothing like that. But just in all the violence and forcing, kidnappings and I have no right to put my hands on another child of God like that. And so that's that. And it was every day. It was all the time. It was nonstop. I can't even tell you how many fights I've been. That type of stuff. It's not like, again, I don't come on here to try to out thug people or out tough guy people or whatever. But I couldn't even fathom the number of how many times I've been in the middle of a brawl, melee, fight, jumping, being jumped, this, that, guns, whatever. I mean, I just can't even tell you. It was just like a day of our lives. And so kind of messes with your psyche after a while,
Absolutely. Well, then talk to me how you found yourself behind bars. What was the incident? And then let's talk about that kind of, fish experience, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. So what happened was I moved out to Springfield, Illinois. I was recruiting a bunch of kids out there. I was a kid at the time. So when I say kid, I don't want to sound creepy looking at me now with the gray hair, but I was a 16, 17-year-old kid, but I was just really good at what I did. And so I was out in Springfield, Illinois, and I was recruiting, and I got my own cable access television show, which we used to have my own, which was the podcast of its time back then. So I was ahead of the curve on all y'all. I had my own cable access television show to be a neo-Nazi in 1992, 1993 in Springfield, Illinois. So,
and what was it called? I remember seeing it. What was the name of the show?
Yeah, the TV show is called The Reich.
Okay, it's funny that no one picked up on that in the FCC.
Well, in cable access, you can do anything you want back then. Your cable access was for freedom of speech. And that's one back in the day, if you're here, but it was like the high numbers in your cable. When you didn't have the whole satellite, you just had like a cable network, and it was like on a cable box. And then in the high numbers would be like local channels, just local community colleges that had their TV stations, and they would have different shows, and anyone could have a show as long as you didn't break a couple rules. And so I signed up, and they knew they had to give me the show, because if not, I could sue them for freedom of speech. So anyhow, that's how that worked. But anyway, there was a guy who was a rival. He basically what Antifa is. If anyone knows what Antifa, if you hear about Antifa, so that the anti-fascist movement is the biggest thorn in the side of white supremacy in the country. It's the truth. Like, we used to fight with them all over the country. So take whatever you want from that, for your listeners. And I tracked and I fought with these people for years. So I think I know a little bit about what I'm talking about when it comes to who the anti-fascist movement is. And I literally, they were my enemy, and I got a pretty sick brain, and I dissect things differently. And that's why I was a good hockey coach, and I'm a good coach, and anyway, growing up, they were my enemy, and I wound up kidnapping one of their members in Springfield, and held them for a ransom, and that didn't go so well. And then we just wound up letting them go, and he went right to the police, and the police, I hid out because I heard he went to the police after we let him go, and because he had to go to a hospital because had a bunch of, get some stitches and stuff. And anyhow, he went to the police, and I hid out from them, and they arrested me at the next taping of my TV show, because I was snuck back into town. I was like, oh, I'm just going to go do the next taping of my TV show, because the cops won't know I'll be there. So come on. And yeah, I got there, and I knew the cameramen looked different, that type of thing. So I knew the cameramen looked different. So, and they got me. So that's what I went to prison for.
So talk to me about walking through the doors then. I've interviewed a lot of people that have been inside. Obviously, I don't have personal experience myself. We get Hollywood telling us a lot of stories when it comes to that. You're from this specific, white supremacist group. Um, you know, as you walk in, is it Hollywood style? You're immediately brought into one group, or was there a kind of shaky start to your entrance to prison?
No, it was very easy start for me. I had to go through a county jail and through trial, and that's county jail is where you sit and wait to go up this big boy prison, And I had made a bunch of friends in there, just waiting my trial. My trial was a big deal. It was like on the news all the time, and the kidnapping was on the news. The TV show was on the news, and so everyone kind of knew who I was in the county jail, which actually made it rough at first. That made it rough at first because just the jail, because I was the youngest kid in this adult prison or adult jail, is a huge county jail, gigantic. So they kept me in segregation for a long time. And because of my age, I was 17, and they didn't know what else to do with me. And I was a neo-Nazi. There was a bunch of black people. They were like, we don't know what might happen here. So, and it was like kind of like a protective custody, but it wasn't a protective. It was just like, they were like, we don't know what to do with you type thing. We're worried. And I'll just tell you this fast story. There was a little bit of a spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, I would say. I don't know if it was a spiritual awakening, but it's spiritual experience which led to a spiritual awakening started in there. So anyhow, I'm in this segregation in the county jail and young. And so what I did was I started reading the Bible. That's what a lot of people do. People joke, they say, where do you find God at? You find him in the county jail. That's where everyone else finds him, So I was reading and studying and, had nothing else to do. I was in segregation. I was in the hole. Like I was never allowed out of my cell. So reading was like the only thing you got to do. So I was just like reading the Bible, do this, I would pray. And so anyway, I decided I'm going to fast one weekend while I'm in the hole. I'm just going to fast. Now I'm going to fast because I'm praying to God. I was like, God, I'm not going to eat for the next 3 days. And I want you to kill all the guards. And I want you to pop my door. And I want you to knock down that wall. And I want you to let me go home. That's what I'm going to fast for that. If you're real, you'll do that for me. I swear, I'm insane at the time. But I remember this. I'm praying for this. God, you'll do this. You will kill these people and you will pop these, just like you did the Israelites and Moses and the ocean and all that, right? I'm like, all right, I'm not going to eat. So for 3 days, I don't eat. And they keep asking me, why am I not eating? And I won't tell the guards because the part that I read in the Bible, it says, if you fast, you cannot brag or boast that you're doing this for God. Because it kind of defeats the purpose. If you're going to run around telling everyone how your fasting is because you're so spiritual. So look at me, I'm so humble. Let me tell you all about it, type of shit. So anyway, so I can't tell them why I won't eat. So the warden of the jail thinks that I'm like on a hunger strike, but I won't tell them. So he comes in now. It's his third day. He comes in on my on Sunday, and it was dinner time, and I refused to eat, which was my last meal. I was not going to eat that was my last meal. And I refused to eat. I was going to refuse to eat. So the warden pulls me out of my cell and says, "Hey, why are you not eating?" And I said, "Well, I can't tell you." Or he just kept saying, "Why are you not eating?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Are you trying to kill yourself?" I said, "No." He's like, "Are you on a hunger strike? Or you want to put word out that you're on a hunger strike or something?" I was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, why are you not eating?" And all I kept thinking was like, I can't tell him because there's some stuff going down tomorrow and I'm going to get out of here. And he's in trouble, right? Like, I'm about to say, like, you should go home and say goodbyes because some stuff's going down tomorrow. But I just wouldn't tell him why I wouldn't eat. I just was like, And he says to me, "How about this, Mr. Meeink? If you eat tomorrow, Monday morning," which I'd already planned on eating Monday morning. I couldn't wait to eat Monday morning. I was starving. Couldn't wait to eat. He says, "If you eat tomorrow, I'm going to take you out of here and I'll put you in a different cell block. You don't need to be in the hole anymore." And the next day I ate. And he came and got me himself and said, "All right, let's go. I'm going to take you over to this new honors block. It's called the honors block. It's where they get people that want to be good and are usually have big trials, so they're not looking for trouble. They're too worried about their cases to worry about trouble in a cell block. So it's like they call it the honors block. And what happened, and I'll wrap this whole story up with this, is that what happened was I was praying for these extreme things to happen. Like God was going to kill the guards, pop the door, let the wall fall down. What God did to me was there was a moment walking from my old cell block to the new one where I thought about, God doesn't give me what I want. He gives me what I need because I'm insane. Why, so he's not going to give me what I want, but he's going to give me what I need. And what I needed to do was get out of a cell block where just want people to know that in solitary confinement, after enough time, you will talk to yourself. And I was talking to myself. Others were talking to themselves. That's what happens in solitary confinement after a while. And so God was like, okay, you've had enough. Let's go. And so I tell that story just to let you know that God will give you what you need, not always what you want. So.
Just quickly before we move to prison, when you mentioned Antifa, was there a certain race that was a part of Antifa, or was it mixed? Because obviously it's an anti-fascist movement specifically, but was that people that were minorities? Was it a lot of Caucasians that were just opposed to the neo-Nazi movement? Like, who were you seeing as far as the people behind the masks?
More or less white people, but they did have members that were Black and Latino and Asian, I remember, and a lot of Jewish people are in the anti-fascist movement. So, yeah,
interesting.
But right, I would say majority white.
So. Right. Yeah, because I mean, obviously, fast forward to recently, there have been pigeonholing, a tarring of the brush of all groups, and based on certain areas where maybe things were made worse by certain groups, and calling themselves that. But the concept of being anti-fascist is something I think most people would stand behind. So it's kind of interesting. You've got a unique perspective on this actual group through lived experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was a huge thorn in their side. They were a huge thorn in our side. But I've definitely had some enemies on that side for a long time.
So you come out of jail, you go into the prison population. Talk to me about the influence of the neo-Nazis in there, and let's kind of walk through the awakening that you started to have behind bars.
Yeah, so no, I was, when I got the prison, and then when I wound up getting 3 to 5 years up in state prison for the kidnapping over the unlawful. It was aggravated unlawful restraint was the final plea bargain deal. So I got 3 to 5 years and went upstate. And when I got upstate, there was a couple other Black kids that came up through the county with me that I knew up there, and some white guys. But when I got up there, I was very well protected. I'll tell you, one of the first prisons I had to go to was with a prison with a man. I don't know if you know this name, but you might. Some of your listeners will. A man named John Wayne Gacy. He was a serial killer. Yep. He used to dress like a clown and kill. So he's in the prison I'm going to. And I'm 17, same age of the boys he killed. And I'm going to the same prison with this guy. But I was never scared because I had already gotten letters in the county jail from some of the white gangs up in the prison. Again, I was I had a TV show, a local TV show that everyone knew about. So the gangs all know about that. So I'm like a celebrity to the neo-Nazis for that. Plus I known so much of the literature, which is a huge deal. I mean, I can go in there and debate about, I didn't just hate Black people. I could come up with reasons and debate people and talk about this and talk about that, more than common membership could, by a long shot, actually. So anyhow, I just knew I was safe. Like I never went into the prison system like a lot of people I think do or have felt is like, oh my gosh, the shower, don't drop the soap, don't do this. I guarantee I didn't, by the grace of God, I didn't go into prison with any of that fear, because I was like, just new. And I was a young white kid. I was 17 years old, fairly okay looking, um, but I never worried about it once. Just wasn't part of the deal at the time. So, and I was very well respected, and the Aryans all loved me as the guy with the TV show. I had a big swastika tattooed on my neck. I got tattoos all over my head. I mean, this is the early 90s. Now that's so common. Back then, that wasn't common. That was hardcore, So anyway, that's how it all started. And but like I said, there was black kids that I was friends with in the county jail who, when I seen them in state prison, it wasn't like we weren't allowed to talk to each other. Like, there was no gang war going on. The main prison I wound up doing most of my time at, there was a gang war and race war like a year earlier and had just ended by the time I got there. So nobody went to go back down on lockdown. So everyone's like, let's keep the peace, which is a good time to be at a prison. The just getting let off lockdown. People are like, yo, one punch, one stab, we're back on lockdown for another 3 months, which sucks. Lockdowns suck. So I'm getting there at a good time, man.
So talk to me again how, like you said, you got friends that are, black men. What was that journey to start realizing that you had so much in common with these people and just start kind of debunking this white supremacist narrative that had been fed to you for years by this point?
What was happening was, and I think most people will get this, is that there was a kid that I knew from county jail, and then a couple other kids that I had met once I got right out of state prison. They were black kids from Southside Chicago, Eastside St. Louis. I mean, just North Sider kids. There was and there was a couple kids that weren't even from the state of Illinois. They were like, one guy was from Texas. Now they were all hooked up in their own gangs, and we all lived on the same cell blocks together. So we intermingle. And I knew a couple of them. Played card games with them sometimes, with spades and some other games I could play. And dominoes. I love playing, so I played dominoes with some of them guys. And it just like kind of happened where these guys, like, I noticed that I enjoyed myself more when I sat with them. They happen to be younger black kids from urban areas like I'm from, so maybe that might be it. I don't know. And all my bikers, and because all my guys are bikers, they're some southern and central Illinois Neanderthal bikers, and God love them. That's who they are. I don't know. I don't know anything about a bike. I don't ride Harleys. I'm a city kid myself, right? So, put it together. Like, as I'm sitting there and I would hang out with these guys, they would joke about being on an L train. I grew up on an L train. You know what I'm saying? So I could just tell you there was days when I was getting let off lockdown where some of my Aryans, who I still was a member, an active member, did all my stuff. I was supposed to hang out with them. I mean, did all my gang stuff. I mean, it was a whole big thing, I didn't like this is an American History X. I didn't turn my back on them in prison. I didn't even think I was. I didn't even, I was a 18 now by that time, probably in there, because I turned 18 up there. Like, this is probably just life. And anyhow, I noticed that if my Aryans were going to go do something, and some of the black kids who I now tend to hang out with just sometimes were playing something, and I had a chance and choice for either one, I was going to choose the black kids. They made me laugh more. They made me think about other than, again, my Harley guys are talking about Harleys, which I never driven a Harley in my life. These guys are talking about sports, girls, and inner city living. Who do you think I'm going to get along with? So.
And again, it's that shared experience. It's that commonality. We're back to football again. Doesn't matter where you're from or who you pray to. It's what you're interested in.
And that's when, and then that was the other thing. So then eventually I got invited to go play on their sports teams. It's two of the kids. Let me set this up so it's not like I was some kid that just randomly. I played basketball in the county jail like before I went upstate, and two of those kids, two black kids, black guys, I don't know if they're like 19-year-olds or whatever, but they played basketball with me in the county jail. So when I got up and they got up to the same state prison I was in, they played basketball and had said, hey, he's pretty good for a white guy. You should let him play, that type of thing, you know? And then I went out there and I balled on them, and then they were like, damn, this white kid is good. And I'm like dishing the ball behind my back. And, no, I'm pretty good. I am a pretty good baller. And so they let me play. And then seeing I could talk trash, and I was this white kid from the city. I wasn't like some hick white kid, not that hick white kids can't play basketball. Larry Bird's proved us wrong on that. So I'm not saying nothing like that, but anyway, I showed up as like a city kid. It's just as urban as anybody else. And I'm a neo-Nazi. And swastika on my neck, and I'm throwing alley-oop passes,
So talk to me about your transition out of prison then. So you serve your time. Firstly, how well are you set up to reintegrate? And then what is that initial experience for you?
All right. So, well, I'll tell you this. Let me tell you before I get out of prison what happened was, so when I was a neo-Nazi, my early days, my 14-year-old, 15-year-old days, my second, third year into third year into the neo-Nazis. One of the cool thing about my life experience is that I was also a city kid. Most of my real hardcore neo-Nazi Aryan guys are like suburban hickey guys, right? There are city guys. I'm not saying we're not there, but I lived in the urban, very urban-y area, so I can go back and forth. Okay, and so when I used to get in arguments with the black activists that were all around my neighborhood, the Black Israelites, Nation of Islam. I mean, it was just all around me. I used to argue with them when I was a neo-Nazi. There was no fear or fighting. They would say something, and I would yell out from the crowd as they yelled with their microphone, or if they were just yelling out, I'd be like, "Oh yeah," because I have a silver spoon. Because it seemed the argument always seemed like that white people had silver spoon in their mouth. That's what I hear, right? So, and I'd be like, "Yo, I don't have a silver spoon," and I would tell them like, "Yo, my parents are fucking." I'm sorry, like my parents are.
No, you're
drug
fine.
addicts.
You can swear on here, just so you know.
Like my parents are drug addicts, like I don't have a silver spoon. And these black guys used to say this again, because they liked me, even though at the time I'm a shaved neo-Nazi standing on a street corner as they're arguing about black power and this and that, right? To me. So I'm just like, that's bullshit. That's wrong, whatever it might be. Right. So, but we used to get to talking, and they liked me for a reason. And then one guy said to me one day, he goes, "Frank, we're not saying that you don't have it hard because you're white. We're just saying that if you were black, it would have been a little bit harder." And I was always like, no, nope. I was very arrogant and huge know-it-all. I know everything all the time. But I was like, no, nope. There's not this systematic racism. There's not these things, nope. I'm just doing that to them. But it's stuck in my head that he just said it'll be tougher if you were black. Well, when I got upstate prison, man, I'm meeting these young black kids. Listen, I kidnapped somebody, and I only wound up having to do 1 full year in prison. I kidnapped somebody. There were black kids who were getting like 15, 16, 20-year bits for selling crack. Selling cocaine. They were selling cocaine on the street. It was free base for them, and I remember when I was in prison going, they're right. They're right. If I was a black dude and I would have did that kidnapping like that, 15, 20, no doubt. But I got 3 because of the color of my skin. And I just remember looking at that going, okay, Like, this isn't just, they're right. They're not lying about what it's like as a Black American. So that was starting to happen to me in prison. Now, I wasn't changing my views yet, but I was like, okay, some things can be right, some things can be wrong. This is right. Okay. So that was one of the first things that kind of tweaked my interest in like going, because I was so set on that they were wrong. I was so set on like, no, you're wrong. It's not like that. And they're like, okay. And I just remember it's probably one of those great arguments where people just got to go, okay, whatever, dude. I'm not going to argue with you. You'll see it eventually, and it happened. So, anyway, I get released from prison, going back to being a neo-Nazi. I never changed. So I got out of prison as a neo-Nazi. I was still a neo-Nazi. It says in American History X. I got out of the move. I mean, I get out of prison, still in the movement, go back to Philadelphia. Sorry, I talk with my eyes closed a lot. It's my trick, by the way. It's because I'm building the timeline. So people always say, why you just talk with your eyes closed? That's why. Not because I'm on anything. Anyway, back to my timeline of what I'm talking about. Go back to Philly, out of prison, back to the neo-Nazi realm in the world and everything I enjoy at the time. This is all my friends. But the one thing that happened was when you have a big swastika on your neck, these aren't, and you go fill out a job application, and I already have an aggravated kidnapping already on my adult prison record. Yeah, not good. So these ain't good people skills. So what happened was filling out all these job applications, and I'm not getting anywhere with anybody. Blazing swastika. Just think of it. A blazing swastika on someone's neck coming and puts a job application in. What do you think's going to happen? These ain't good people skills. So a buddy of mine said he can get me a job doing an antique show, antique furniture. And it was a guy, and I said, I'd take the job. My buddy goes, yeah, it's $100 a day, and you'll make some tips on the side. He's like, you might even make probably $100 a day in tips. He's like, you make, I'm like, okay, I'm down. Like, I need money. I was 19 years old, just fresh out of prison, shaved bald with all these tattoos on my head. Sure. And so my buddy gets me the job, and as soon as I say I'll take the job, my buddy goes, oh, I got to tell you, though, the guy's Jewish who owns the company. And I was like, damn. I was like, well, I don't got to talk to this guy, do I? Because my buddy goes, no. And he's like, he's Jewish. Like, you'll see him. You'll know when you see him. And so I said, well, I don't have to talk to this guy, do I? And my buddy goes, nope. And I said, well, do you tell him about me? You tell him I'm a neo-Nazi? And my buddy's actually a neo-Nazi that's working there already. So it's not like this big icebreaker. Anyhow, I asked him, I said, yeah, do you tell him about me? And he said, yeah, I told him all about you. I said, what did he say? I said, I told him all about everything, about prison. I said, well, what did he say? And he said, he doesn't give a rat's ass what you believe. Just don't break his furniture. That's all. He don't care what you believe. Just don't break his furniture. And I showed up and I worked for this man. And this man was an amazing human being who wound up giving me a full-time job from there and was just a good human being to me. And he was like one of the last straws where one day, and this, I hope anyone can use this, but one day I was still a neo-Nazi at the time, and I have this arrogance and this fear about people might know who I really am, and the imposter syndrome, and that I'm really not smart. I'm actually secretly dumb, and I wish everyone would just know. I want people to know that, but I don't want them to know that. Blah, 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 blah. Well, when I would break things, if on accident I broke something, I go, Keith, yo, man, I'm so stupid. I'm so sorry. And one day Keith just got sick of me saying that. He came over and he gripped me up. This stocky little Jewish guy grabs me and says, stop saying you're stupid, you idiot. Clean up the mess and let's go. And I cleaned up the mess and got in the truck. And as we're driving, he just unloads on me about how smart I am. And no one had ever talked to me like that ever in my life. Like, you're really smart, man. You figure. My parents never said any of this stuff to me. I'm not trying to be a sad sack here or a poor soul. Serious. My parents never sat down and said, yo, I was really good at football growing up, like sought after playing football. I've never heard my parents go, man, you're such a good football player. Just never heard it. Not their deal. And here's this guy telling me about how smart I am, this Jewish man. And as he's just unloading about how smart I am, he said something that's really funny. He just said, Frank, smart people can fake being dumb, but dumb people can't fake being smart. You just are. Get over it. And that was it. Like, I was like, wow. Like, it put me on this trajectory in life that made me go, maybe I am smart. Maybe I can do something. Instead of that whole, like, oh, so I'm stupid. It's dumb. That's dumb. And a lot of people have that in their life, right? I'm not special. People have that in all their lives. Certain aspects of life, no, don't matter, stupid. I can't do that anyway. That was the Eeyore, from the Eeyore of life, whatever. And so anyway, when he gave me that talk in the truck one day, and as he drops me off, I just remember, I was shaved bald that day with boots on with red laces, which said, I'm a neo-Nazi, as I'm working for a Jewish guy, driving in a truck with him for 6 hours for the day to go pick up some furniture. And he lets me out of that truck, and I just remember walking home. It was like a 2-mile walk, and I just was crying to myself. And I think I'm pretty sure I was crying. I can't remember exactly. I don't want to say I was like, ah! But I definitely, there was some emotion going on, what am I doing? Like, this has been proven wrong to me now. Like, I know that the God that I love, the God that's in, the creator of the universe, whatever you want to call it, don't matter. My God doesn't care what you call him. He just wants you to call him, right? My God's not that petty. But anyhow, God had just consistently put people in my life to be like, who are you? Right? Right at the right times. Like, he just kept doing it to me. Like, who are you? Who are you to judge, Frank? You're the criminal thug just getting out of prison. Now you're going to judge a Jewish man who runs a business. Oh, yeah. You're the real master, real master races. I'm the one committing crimes. Well, black kids were going to college. I'm committing crimes. Yeah, master race, that type of stuff. So anyhow, that was the change. That was my final day. That was the day I got out of that truck. A little dog bark. That was the day I got out of the truck. He gave me my full pay for the day, and I walked and just was like, I'm done. I'm gonna not go around these people anymore. Like, that was my decisions I had to make. And I was thinking, like, if people want to tell me racist jokes, what am I going to say? I'm just going to keep telling people. I was telling myself, like, you're just going to keep saying that. I'm like, hey, I don't want to hear that stuff right now. Or no, I'm not down for that right now. Because being the racist of my neighborhood in the racist period, people like to tell racist jokes, And I was like, and by this time in my life, being a neo-Nazi for the last 6 years, I've heard every racist joke in the world. Nothing's new, and they're all dumb.
So talk to me about what was next. You have this awakening. You have, again, this full circle now where you see people as people again. You've got this tattoo on your neck. You've got the shaved head with tattoos all over your scalp. What's next for you? How do you take those first few steps in a new direction?
What happened was I started to avoid them at all costs. Like, if I knew my neo-Nazi friends were going to be somewhere, I just didn't go. I was blessed with the fact that I had a whole neighborhood where I grew up, where I was living at the time. So I was living back at my mom's. So I grew up in that neighborhood as a kid. So I played football with all that neighborhood. I went to school with most of the kids in that neighborhood. So I had a whole set of friends to switch back over to, which really helped, which is a huge benefit for myself, because I know a lot of people that do get out of this that don't. That was all their friends is the people, that was it. And they're in their neighborhood. There were some neo-Nazis in my neighborhood, but nothing. I definitely have 2,500 other cousins in that neighborhood, because we're all related down in those neighborhoods. We're all second and third cousins and married to one another, crazy stuff. Not incest, just third cousins marrying third cousins. Now we're cousins. It's the whole big thing down there. Anyway. So I was lucky. So how do I stop? So I stopped going around them at all times. And it's funny because I burned bridges by the way I was acting, And I remember people just said, how do you, when you burn a bridge that you did never plan on crossing again, do you know what I mean? Like I never planned on so it wasn't like it wasn't a hard bridge to ignite to burn, and it didn't last long. It was just done, So I just stopped going around them at all cost, and started talking to other people who I know that like dabbled in the neo-Nazi world, but then got out of it and seen some stupid things about it. So I had some other people to bounce some ideas off of. So yeah. And then there was bad things that happened. Like when I was a neo-Nazi, we weren't allowed to do drugs. There was no drugs in our movement at all. Like you did drugs, you were out. You gotta go. And that was a good thing. Not, it's the 1% good thing of this whole big thing is that we didn't do any drugs. And anyhow, when I got out of the neo-Nazis, both my parents are drug addicts and drug dealers and middlemen and middle peoples, and my whole neighborhood I grew up with, drugs is everywhere. So so I was like, oh, I don't have to follow that rule anymore. And I was already an alcoholic. I've been an alcoholic since I was about 16. I didn't add that in my story, but and that's not an excuse for people. I don't want people to, so you're gonna blame it all on the alcohol. No, I have an alcoholic brain. That's what a lot of people don't understand. There's a difference between an active alcoholic and someone who just has an alcoholic brain. And I have that alcoholic brain, let alone when it's an active alcoholic brain. Whoa, I'm a self-deprecating narcissist. I will tell you bad things about me. And then if you should repeat those things back to me, you hurt my feelings. Right? And that's kind of alcohol. That's alcoholism. So anyhow, I had alcoholism. And so when I got back to my mom's neighborhood, I got real deep into the drugs and alcohol realm. So did the whole, I just like the Vicodin and the Percocet. And then I was eating 15 to 20 of them a day easily. And it just grew. My addiction just grew. Then I went to the Oxycontin, which my mom was a big seller of Oxycontin. And then I got into I can't afford the Oxys because they were super, even with my family discount, I couldn't afford it. I was becoming such an addict to those that heroin was the next step. So just down the road until, but now I'm coming up on 7 years sober right now. So 7 years sober, and I work a pretty good, what they call a program in my life today. So helping other men follow this way.
What was the lowest point that you found yourself, and what were the tools that you used to get yourself out of this addiction?
So I was struggled for years with the program. The program meaning, is like Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12-step programs. So when I say program, I mean that. So I struggled for years with the program, in and out of rehab. I've been, no lie, man, like 12 to 14 rehabs. I don't know if you want to count some of the ones I went to twice as two. I don't know who's keeping count, but there's a lot of rehab stops in there. I couldn't get this thing. And then what finally got me was, so just to fast forward through the whole story in a way, is in a good way, is I got married. I moved to Iowa, working in hockey, working in pro hockey, working in radio, doing all this cool stuff, but kept relapsing. And I would get 1 year sober and relapse. And I was married and I had kids and coaching hockey and traveling all around the country with these hockey teams and my kids playing hockey. And in 2019, so actually 2014, my son dies in a car accident at 19. Then my mom dies like a year later of a fentanyl overdose in a crack house, in a trap house. Um, then a couple cousins who were like brothers to me killed themselves. It was just like this chain reaction of 5 years. And then in 2019, me and my wife get a divorce, and it was a brutal divorce. Just it was very ugly, got very ugly very fast, like divorce can, no violence, no nothing like that. Just very bad manipulation on both sides. We were not good with each other. It got really, really, really ugly, and I'm definitely not spiritually fit through the situation. So I relapsed again, and there was a man out in California that I had met years earlier at a recovery gathering, and this is back when I lived in LA. I lived in LA from 2010, 2011, filming a TV show that never made it to air about me doing interventions on neo-Nazis. But anyway, and I had met a man there. By this time in 2014, 2015, around that time, I also find out that I'm Jewish. I found that I had some Jewish DNA, which was kind of fun and amazing. Like, loved it. Was like, this is amazing. So anyway, 2019, it all just comes apart, and I kind of had a moment in a car with God, and because I was relapsing again, and that man that I met in that gathering in California, I called him and said, "Hey, I need you to work with me to get me sober again, and to really work this program in my life the way God has shown him to do it." And so anyway, I moved out to California so that man would be my recovering rabbi sponsor. I've also now, I didn't have to convert over to Judaism. I just had to transfer over to Judaism because of my DNA background, and the mother side is the important side. So, and then I started practicing Judaism and got very serious about working the program in my life on a daily basis, and then helping other men find their way. So very, very, very active in the 12-step program. And it's, I don't want to get too crazy for people, but like the 12 steps is just a way of us walking to God so that we can go help others. That's what the 12 steps are, so which is a cool thing. So,
well, speaking of helping others, talk to me about Harmony Through Hockey then.
Yeah, Harmony Through Hockey. I started Harmony Through Hockey in 1996. 2 years out of prison, I had a chance to meet up with the owner of the Flyers and his son. I got a dinner. And I told him about my experiences in prison, that when I played football and basketball, me and all the other inmates put everything to the side just to play. And he he thought it was cool, and I pitched an idea to do it with hockey, and the Flyers jumped on board, and I had a job working for the Flyers, trying to coach kids, but I wasn't good at it. I wasn't good at coaching at the time. I'm good at leadership, but I'm not good at coaching. So that all came later on when I moved to Iowa. So, but Harmony Through Hockey is where we just taught kids to play the game together, and then later on, we even broke it off to where it was just trying to get regular, mainly urban Black kids. We would pay their membership fee and their equipment fee to join bigger leagues, and it's basically just trying to introduce more kids to, the greatest game on earth. It's not even debatable, the greatest game on earth. I know people like football or soccer, and I know it's around the world, but hockey's it's a different beast, man. It's a great, when you have what they call like a hockey player on your hands, that's like a really good thing. That means you have a kid that can take a hit and get up and still get back into play, and like they're just they're a breeder of their own. And so I try to teach that, to bring that to kids, to bring that to their lives. That hockey's a great example of getting knocked down and you get back up. Like it's a lot of amazing life lessons you can teach in hockey. So I used to use hockey as a teaching lesson about life, and and also teaching about the greatest game on earth. So,
What are some of the success stories that you've had through that program as far as kids that maybe had a troubled background that went on to do something positive?
yeah, man, I mean, there's a lot of kids that just came through that program and um, just went on to go have great lives. I mean, there's just been so many of them. And not even that, like, this kids that later on just like turned around and like loved the game of hockey and like took the stigma out of the game of it not being for black people. But I mean, I have a couple of kids that I've coached, and I wouldn't say just through my harmony through hockey. Again, later on got very competitive into very competitive coaching, like AAA, and I got just the type of person I am. You know, like I can get in somewhere and actually, I'm coaching. Next thing you know, I'm leading. Next thing I'm doing this, and I just started coaching and started with coaching some of this youth hockey things, but also coaching my son's team, and my son was pretty good. So he was going in different divisions, and then the coaches would be like, "Hey, why don't you come help me?" I wasn't like this pushy dad. Like coaches wanted me to coach. I was pretty good at it, and then I just started getting jobs coaching, like legit, like paid jobs to coach, and it was pretty cool, pretty wild run. But anyhow, to stop talking about me for a second. A lot of the kids just later on just stuck with the game. And when you stick around the game, you stick around winners, and you stick around your coaches, and you stick around mentors, and they had a better shot at life if you do those things. And that was the kind of the culture we were trying to teach them. So,
Absolutely. Well, I want to shift the narrative a little bit to
let's do it.
two areas. The element of neo-Nazism in law enforcement, which I know will shock people listening, but you've got a very interesting insight into that. And we're not talking about, the majority, of course, and then I also want to shift on, the kind of current environment and what that's doing to some of this more extremist mentality. But let's start with law enforcement. Talk to me about what you're seeing as far as some of the people that believe and lean into these groups that you were a part of entering into the first responder professions.
Yeah. So just to give people and your listeners a little background, so it's just not some guy just randomly throwing out things here, is that I've actually testified in front of Congress and in congressional hearings before about this, because what I'm going to say is factual, not hyperbole or hypothetically. Is that when I was a neo-Nazi, we were told to become cops. It was, it was pretty widely talked about thing in the circles I ran in. Some of our guys became cops. Some got fired, some stayed, some had enough pull with the union, whatever it might be. And people now know I'm talking the truth here. But that's not even, which is a huge problem. It's a really big problem if that's someone who's pulling over minority people and people of color. And I think cops know that what I'm talking about. But what I'm really concerned about is not just that neo-Nazi guy, because see, that gets people off. Like, I don't have a card to the neo-Nazi gang, so I don't know what I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about there's like a far right-wing extremism problem in our policing. It just is the truth, man. I hear and see, and trust me, I'm not coming at this to be mean to cops, but there's this far right-wing extremism culture that's part of that police culture that I see. And for people to say, "Oh, well, why are you just going to pick on them?" The police last year in America killed 1,300 people. The closest country in the industrial world last year that killed, I think it was Germany, was 19 people. Now, granted, we have gun laws and different gun scenarios, so I get there's some stuff. I get it. But 1,300 people were killed by the police last year. That's an insane number. And then when you get into mass incarceration, which is a whole other beast, but it's built from the same thing, is that we have, guys, I mean, again, 30% of the world's women's prison population, when we're only 2.6% of the world's female population, but we have 30% of the world's women's prison population. And for all the people to go, well, that they didn't do anything bad, that we're not talking about upstate prisons. And this is what people got to understand. That used to be the old number, is the upstate prisons, like what's there. And that was, but then in the late 80s and early 90s, like my time, is our county jail system grew. And it became just as populated. It used to be minor. Through our whole history, county jails were really small with numbers, and the state prisons were. Then the number just grew, and sometimes it's like that now. And so there's things that I think that we can fix to stop that growth of that mass incarceration, which we should all be very embarrassed about, but we're just not, because it's kept away from us. So we don't talk about it much. And I see that a lot and it's in the culture, and it's in traffic stops. Like, and that's a lot of things the black activists have said too. It's like, you don't understand what it's like to be pulled over and be black. And they're like, oh, no, you don't. They're like, no, you don't know what it's like. It's scary. It's so scary that we have a whole group of Americans of a shade of color who have to have the talk with their kids. Yo, if you say to a white person, hey, do you ever have the talk with your kids? You're going to think, oh, sex or becoming a man or becoming a woman. What do you mean? You say that to black people, they know exactly what the talk is. And it's about how to, like, basically survive a traffic stop with a cop. That's insane. And we need to, like, make some adjustments. And we will eventually. Eventually, we're going to make these adjustments to traffic stops. It's coming. I don't think anytime real soon, but eventually these reforms that people are asking for will be coming. So anyway, it's a big part of my life. I'll end it with this, is that say what you want about me personally, whatever. I know that I have a job to do. My job today is that the God I serve is not really happy with mass incarceration. And so my job is to make sure, that's part of my mitzvah to my God today, is to make sure to warn people, like, we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. Like, we're not doing it right. And it's going to take all of us to fix it. So
the over 1,000 conversations I've had on this show, there's so many contributing factors to, what you're talking about. I've had, for example, the superintendent of Bastoy prison on twice. I had another progressive one up in the Northwest that's mirroring, but Norway has the lowest recidivism on the planet. And the way that they do prisons is, you go and you basically live in a housing community. Now, you don't have freedom. You're on an island off Oslo, but you cook, you clean, you go to work, you go to school, because the idea is you are going to move back into someone's street one day. And so do you want someone who's going to be a functioning member of society, or do you want someone who's just waiting for the next carjacking or whatever it is to find themselves right, back behind bars, and your family was the victim of that? So they've got such an amazing model. You look at Portugal, decriminalized addiction. And we know how many of those people behind bars are related to, the prohibition of drugs. And so what they did, they reversed, they basically put addicts in the hands of the medical community, not the law enforcement community. And don't get me wrong, if an addict robs a car, then they're going to be arrested, of course. But if they're caught with the user's amount, they get not even told you have to go to this clinic. They get educated on here's what's available to you. They don't get a criminal record. They get told all these resources, and then they go, oh, so they actually want to help me. There's job creation, there's housing, there's all kinds of stuff. So most voluntarily say, I want help, because now I'm not going to be arrested. Now I have the ability to be employed. And they literally reversed their crisis to the lowest in the world now. Portugal is the model for drug decrim and the addiction crisis. So you have all these models that are working. To be, to give a lot of credit to our law enforcement officers, every time there is, shooting or whatever it is, no one's saying, well, why are the streets of America so fucking unsafe? You go to Oslo, you go to Lisbon, you go to, Osaka. There aren't gangs shooting each other on the corner. No, there isn't the homelessness that we see. There isn't any of that. So culturally, we have failed our law enforcement officers as well. And I want to take a dive into the extremism with that, because I'm seeing gas thrown on the fire of that at the moment. But it's a multifaceted problem. But that's the thing. Now we can see these layers. We can start addressing them. Like law enforcement is having to hire, 18 in a heartbeat. So now we're getting these people that should never even been wearing a police officer's uniform, wearing it. And we've all fully aware of the YouTube videos of those people. So, and then, like you said, then you've got this group that is not the right moral character to be a police officer that's thrown in there as well. So we got so many elements that are contributing to, the gang violence that we're seeing, the forcing a police officer to pull the trigger because of the mental health crisis, because of the 3-strike rules. And then, like you said, you then add in these people that, do have these extremist views, where that's yet another layer of this. So the fact that we can see all these layers is a good thing, because we can start picking them apart and start fixing them. But, it's unacceptable. I think between men and women collectively, if I'm not mistaken, we make 4% of the population, where I think we're at least 25% of the world's incarcerated people. I think in the 70s, we had about 300,000 prisoners, if I'm not mistaken, and now we're up to, 1.2 million or something. We have companies that make money by using prisoners as their workforce. I mean, it's where's the checks and balances when you need prisoners to make other companies money? You're going to keep bringing in prisoners. So our system is completely broken, and there are countries around the world that are doing this so well that would free up resources, that would allow agencies to get people wanting to be cops again, set the bar high, having the best people apply. And therefore, you would address this in so many different areas. The prohibition laws would take the power away from the underworld slinging dope, because you wouldn't need to anymore. But you don't hear any of this. And this is what drives me crazy. Oh, it's the left. Oh, it's the right. No, it's fucking no one. No one has done anything to address this, even though there are other countries saying, we will help you, and we will show you what we did in our countries. And when there are solutions in other nations and we're too fucking arrogant to listen to them, that's the real core of the problem.
And the great example is the prohibition. So in our Bill of Rights, the 18th Amendment is the prohibition of alcohol, where we're not allowed to drink anymore. And that's when like Al Capone and all the mob and all those people rised up. That was because of the 18th Amendment. So they limited prohibition, said you can't drink, it's against the law, and all this havoc and craziness broke out. So in 1933, so 13 years later, they write the 21st Amendment, which is the amendment that goes against the prohibition. It's the only amendment out of all the 27 amendments. There's only one amendment that's written that goes against another amendment. And that's the 21st Amendment. So let me get to a point. The reason why I tell you that is that in 1933, they legalized the drinking of alcohol again. Just 2 years later is when Alcoholics Anonymous is founded.
Oh, really?
Just 2 years out of prohibition, because people were legally allowed to go get help. It wasn't against the law. It wasn't this criminalization thing. It was this, I'm now allowed to go get help, which started having people having conversations. And so, yes, that it's, once we fix those laws, like the drug laws and those, we're trying to do it with marijuana, already, and which is a great thing. And I'm in recovery, and I'm saying legalizing weed is amazing. Now, all recovery doesn't say that. I'm not speaking for all recovery. I'm speaking for myself. We need to, do anything that makes it so that the cops can't rip your car apart, which they still can for the smell of weed, which is funny enough. Anyhow, we can definitely move forward with this, knowing that we need good policing. I've run around with people who are abolitionists, who think the police should be done. And, we need to, I get what they're saying. When I listen, I understand why they're saying it, but we can't do away with police. Who are we going to call when you have a missing person? Who are you going to call when there's a bank robbery? Who are you going to call when there's a domestic violence? When are you going to call the townspeople together and go beat a person up? Like, are we going to go back to this? Is that what we want? We're going to get the bank robbery. We're going to get all the townspeople together and hold up the bank and hold the bank robber up. I mean, this is where we're going. Of course not. So, but we definitely need a change in the style and the way of policing, because I don't trust it's just a few bad apples things anymore. I just don't trust that. And I think most black people have been telling us for years, they don't trust it. It's just a few bad apples, because the good apples turn and and don't say anything when bad apples are being bad apples. It's the whole blue line thing. They just can't. It's not in the culture. It's not like they're not bad people. It's just not in the culture to help with these changes that people are asking for. I mean, but we're going to get there someday. I believe in that. But we just got to keep on it and not give up and not be that's the other thing is people, and this is true, and the cops that I'm friends with have told me, they're like, hey, where's it back in 2020? They're like, where's the flavor of the month or flavor of the year? A couple of them said, where's the flavor of the year? These protesting, they'll be on to something else in a year. Don't worry about it. And I was always like, no, not this time. Not in 2020. Not this time. And they were right, man. They were right. 2 years later, they're protesting something else, and we never moved anywhere with any police reform. No, we had an inkling of moving, and then we stopped.
Well, again, the pendulum swung so far the wrong way. It went so far that now it was, like you said, defund. Let's just get rid of the police department, rather than why do we have so much crime in our country in the first place? Is there a mental health crisis? What are we doing about addiction? What are we doing about the foster system? And, all these different areas that you can really make a difference on. After COVID, was there any conversation about, hey, it seems like if you're obese and you get COVID, you're more likely to die. It seems if you're a smoker and get COVID, you're more likely to die. What are we doing about that? Nothing. No, we don't want to talk about it anymore. We have 6 feet and vaccines. Oh, just don't say anything anymore. We don't want to talk about it. Well, you were fucking wrong about a lot of stuff. We think we should talk about it. Not just saying, again, I'm not anti-vax, but you told everyone if they didn't take it, that they were all murderers. And if they stood 6 feet and 1 inch apart from each other, they were safe. It was just fucking lunacy. So it's about that accountability. And in law enforcement, I've had a lot of great police officers on here. And as the saying goes, no one hates a bad cop more than a good cop. And you hear them say, yeah, you're absolutely right. We do need change. Everything from fitness standards to much more training to community interaction. So that profession wants those standards too. Where I, really, really worry, and don't get me wrong, I see posts from first responder, air quotes, friends, people I know, who I know when they were younger had service burning in their heart and are great people, but now, Islamophobic posts and all kinds of stuff. So I see that, and I really feel that has been perpetuated most recently. Now, let me be very clear. I can't stand either of these parties. They're two wings of the same bird. And people, when I say one thing, oh, you're a libtard, or oh, you're a right-wing fascist. Like, no, I'm in the middle, the normal people in the middle. But this most recent administration, no one can tell me that they haven't thrown gasoline on the fire of extremism, on racism. Like, a lot of their stances are not about community and pulling people together. They're about division. They're about calling all of these people, the Iranians, they're all bad people, tarring everyone with the same brush, the polar opposite of what the World Cup is showing us. So what are you seeing? Because this isn't about politics. It's about a mentally ill person, just like the previous mentally ill person, being in a position of power where, just like you turned a corner and you had the courage to start addressing the trauma that you'd been through. The head of Purdue Pharma that created OxyContin never addressed that. They slept peacefully at night while hundreds of thousands of Americans die from their product. And it's the same with this. Anyone who's deliberately pulling people together, pulling people apart, who sleeps at night, is not fit for that role. And where I've seen through, where I'm sitting, is that is added, power, support, fuel to the extremists of the country that project that's how we all think. And back to our early conversation, that's not who America is. America is mostly incredible, altruistic, kind, caring, community-minded people. Now, have they been drawn in one way or another the last 10 years? Yes, they've been dragged left or right a little bit. But what are you seeing as far as this world that you inhabited when you were younger and the influence of the political narrative at the moment on the strengthening of those groups?
Yeah, no, it's very well. I want to say one thing about what you were just saying, because you're spot on, is that we have a mental health crisis in this country. That's both. No, I don't think I hear either side disagree on that, right? And we have a president right now who does he help our mental health crisis or does he add to it? You know, when you have a guy who tweets at night about revenge, this isn't the leadership for a country that already has a mental health problem. You know,
no, and the one before, just to be very clear, that was telling first responders that were out there with no PPE and no protection for a year, oh, actually, if they don't have the vaccine, they're all murderers and they should be terminated. He also was horrendous for our mental health. Stay at home, don't see your family, get fast food. So, you know, collectively, the last 10 years at least, we've had people that were awful for our mental health.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Look, like I said, America, we're not the bad guys everyone thinks we are, but we are not the good guys that we think we are. And it's been both sides. And I mean, come on. We're run by lobbyists. We can go down the whole list of, you know, like we're literally run by lobbyists, guys. Sorry. Hope I didn't break anyone's bubble on that one. But where I see, for one, though, I want to talk about is that when I would get back to that thing about the recovery real quick, is that, you know, we lifted the oppression off the people. Then this amazing 12-step program is founded. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just giving history of it. Okay. So I'm not trying to recruit anyone here for it's not like that. But this group that's not even 90 years old now has 50 sister programs: Overeaters Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Social Media Anonymous now, right? Because this 12-step style works for any solution in your life if you have the gift of desperation. Anyway, let me get back to this American thing. Is we've started this recovery thing, and now it's all around the world. It's everywhere. You can't go nowhere without being able to find a Meeink somewhere in the world, anywhere, in all these different languages. It's free. It's free. Like, you don't have to pay to go to a meeting or do any of these things or go to these gatherings. You don't have to pay. It's free. And this like amazing, and as you said, altruistic things. That's what that is. It's about helping the next guy coming in, right? That's so American. And this quietly over the last 90 years, millions and millions of people have joined these groups that was founded in America by Americans with freedom of religion, because that's one of the core parts of this, is that you do whatever you want to believe in. We don't control the group, whatever. No one tries to control your higher power. It's like, and end it with this. Because of those programs today, there are millions right now today of children who will go home trusting they know who mom and dad is today. And if they're not coming home to a mom or dad passed out, drunk, being inappropriate, all the things millions of children go through. But there's also now millions of kids because of this program that we made in America. It's made in America. It's amazing. It's this beautiful walk towards God. And so we can do things. Like America does things, guys. Like we're a good country that we can do things together, but we can only do it when we truly do it together, you know? So anyhow, that's my rant.
Yeah, it's an important one. It really is. It's been such an amazing conversation. I want to just throw some quick closing questions at you if you've got time.
Sure.
All right. Well, the first one I'd love to ask, is there a book or are there books that you love to recommend? It can be related to our discussion today or completely unrelated.
Okay. Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah. Yeah. I have a couple. Um, so, uh, the big book of AA is my cornerstone book. Then I had to say the Torah, because I do Torah and Torah, the Bible studies. But also, man, a lot of my books that I'm reading right now that are really good is like God of Our Understanding, which is like the Jewish take on the 12 steps, the Jewish thought of the 12 steps. Beautiful book, amazing book. So, um, yeah. And the autobiography of Malcolm X is always a good one.
Beautiful. And then your book, I totally skipped that. Autobiography of Recovering Skinhead. Talk to me about
Yeah.
the writing process. I've written 2 books now, and I found the writing very cathartic. Reading the audiobook almost had the reverse effect. But,
Mm-hmm.
how was the writing process for you putting your story on paper?
Well, it was amazing. So I wrote with another person, a woman named Professor, a very amazing and highly recommended person when it came to the neo-Nazi subcultures. And she was this professor who wrote other books on the culture and subcultures of white supremacy and blah, blah, blah. So that's how come we got put together and to write this book together. And so, because she just knew everything. Like I never had to like break down who this group was and why this group was formed and who knew this guy, and because she just knew all that. So it was amazing working with her. But also the cool thing was is that we had gotten some grant money, and we wound up traveling to all the different cities that we write about in the book, and like wrote sitting in the city. So like me and the writer would sit down, and she would say, okay, we're sitting right exactly where this happened. Now tell me what you remember sitting here right now. What do you remember? And I would just start getting little flashbacks, because you're sitting right where it happened, and we did that all around the country. Like, so every story that you're going to hear in there, I probably started that story while sitting in front of the prison that you're reading about, because we drove to every prison and sat out front of every prison and talked. And so yeah, so it was really cool. And it was an honor. I liked the fact checking part about it, because that was really cool, because I was like new, like my whole life I felt like I was afraid to tell people the truth about me sometimes, because I was afraid people were like, yeah, okay, you lived in neo-Nazi compounds and you talked about, and I always felt like I was the fisherman telling people that my fish was this big, you know? And when I finally was writing the book, I learned that like my fish was that big. Like the story is insane. And what I went through is insane. And I know that now. I didn't mean to go through it. I didn't set out in life going, you know what? I'm going to go live the most insanest, craziest life I ever could. And writing the book was really, and I was sober. I was one of the times in my life. That's one of the gifts where I see God a lot. Is that when I wrote that book in 2006, 7, and 8, I think it was. Yeah, I was sober. So I was sober then. And I know I was sober, yeah, from 2006 to 2010. I was sober at that time. So it was great. And that was all during the process of writing the book, which has made it really cool. So, and a good memory for me.
Beautiful. Well, what about television, documentaries, and films? Any of those that you like?
Hmm. Television. Wow. I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm just watching right now. I'm watching. Oh, what's it called? Geez, Louise. Something Widow's Bay. It's kind of cute, but I mean, I'm not a big TV guy. I'm not. Try to stay away. I think it's what's rotting our brain. Everything is a reality TV person now, and uh, you know. So anyway, I don't want to preach, so I won't. I will tell you this real quick before we get off too. Is I learned this trick, and anyone can learn. You can borrow it, you can have it, you can say it, you can do whatever you want. So every morning, I take a God walk for about an hour. I get out, walk, pray, try to meditate, do walks, pray, keep doing it over and over again. But in an hour worth of time, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to start thinking about, you know what? Why didn't James text me back yesterday? He was supposed to text me back and he didn't text me back. And then I'll go on, and then the rest of it, I'll be like, you know what? Why didn't James laugh? Why didn't he laugh at my jokes 2 weeks ago? And, I think he gave me a dirty look 3 weeks ago. Now my brain starts going about why I should hate you because you didn't text me back because you were out at dinner with friends and didn't get to text me back. And now it's been over 24 hours, and now I'm taking it personally, right? And I would do that. I have an alcoholic brain that does that, but I think a lot of people have this problem too. So what happened was on these God walks, I started noticing sometimes, and it would also be good. I mean, not to say it was like this bad thing. Like I talked to a friend back from Philly a couple of weeks ago. He called me, heard some good news about me on some whatever, and called me, talked to me about it. And I'm telling him how great life is and I love in life in California, da, 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 da. And then the next day I'm on my God walk, and probably, I don't even know how long it takes. Probably maybe 10 minutes or might have been 2 minutes. I'm not sure, but I know that I went down a road of mimicking the conversations that my friend is going to have later on in Philly with other old friends of mine. And I'm saying, oh, and I hope he says this, and I hope he tells him that I'm doing this. And I'm planning out the conversations between another person and another person about me. And I was like, holy crap, what am I doing? So God gave me this gift. You can have it, you can use it. I don't care. But it's the word stay, S-T-A-Y. And S-T-A-Y stands for stop thinking about yourself. And I use it all throughout my day, all the time. My wife wants to go somewhere and I don't want to go. I go, just stay, friend. It's not about you. Just go. Go and make it an enjoyable time. So, but the trick is, man, is to not take things so personal. I was a person who I took things personal, man. And when I take things personal, my reaction doesn't mean like I'm always going to punch you in the face, but my reactions are, and so I had to learn some tricks, this thing of trying to have some humility, it's like just keeping my mouth shut, make space for others. And it seems like God takes care of me from that point on. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. I really do. And even with that kind of imposter syndrome and that internal monologue, I was telling someone this yesterday. I'm paraphrasing immensely, but some, philosophical wise dude said the first course or first third of your life, you think everyone's talking about you. The second third of your life, you don't care who's talking about you, and the last third of your life you realize no one was ever talking about you in the first place. And there's a Wayne Dyer quote that says, what other people think of me is none of my business. And I've always loved that. So the moment you get into that cycle of, because I mean, doing what I do, I get a lot of pushback, I get a lot of hate, and it's just, I'm trying to make the world better, but that offends people sometimes. So if you listen to every little criticism and let that get into your tiny brain and start spinning like a hamster wheel, you drive yourself up the wall. And when you were saying the God walk, that is one of my things too. My phone stays at home. I take my dog, and it anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And, I just think, and then that way, if it needs to run its course, it runs out of steam. And by the time I get home, I'm not thinking about it anymore.
Yeah. Yep. And that's I just got to always remember, see, my addiction is like this. And a lot of people, I believe, are like this, but I can't judge other people because I gave that up. But I can tell you mine's like this. I was either the shit or I was a piece of shit. Right. And that's an addict's brain. So, and it's a lot of people's brains, I either think of myself as the shit or a piece of shit. I never just thought of myself as just a child of God trying to serve other children of God. Like I never thought that until I finally got recovery in Judaism, and those two combined for me. The way I could say is when I started to work both those things into my life, it was like when you put on a coat and you see the zipper and you see the teeth come together on the zipper, it was like I felt that in my life as I worked both these things. So
amazing. Well, the last question before we make sure everyone knows where to find you and where to find your book. What do you do to decompress?
To decompress, pray, meditate, love prayer, meditation. Again, my God doesn't care what you call him. He just wants you to call him. And it doesn't even have to be a him. My God is non-binary, non-petty. He just wants to talk. And so the decompress with that is that, like, when I bring things to God and also to my spiritual advisor, is to just listen, give time for things to listen and get some discernment that I don't need to make those quick argument, fight conversations. I can sit back, gather myself. And but to decompress would definitely be good prayer, good meditation, maybe a good recovery meeting here or there. So
if people want to learn more about you, want to find the book or buy the book, where are the best places online to do that?
Well, you can find me at I actually just had someone just had a website made for. I have a website now. Crazy enough, and just it's cool. So it's at Meeink. So my first initial F, and then my last name MEEINK that's my .com. So fmeeink at fmeeink.com is my new website. Just kind of got put up. So other than that, here's the thing with me is I don't grift. There's enough grifters right now in our world. And I don't ever do this to sell my book and it's not no one's fault. I'm not here to sell anything. I'm just here for a message that the mass incarceration, we can fix it. We should fix it. The God I serve is not happy with it. So I'm just doing my job of saying there's ways that we can fix this. And coming from a person with my history and my past and my present and my future, things that I do today, that maybe just people might just listen or go, oh yeah, I remember that guy saying that. And now it pops out in their head when they see, oh, that solution did work, or wow, that is a problem. Traffic stops are a problem in this country. Oh, that guy. So if that's what I can do, that's what my job is. But you can just find me at my website or just find me on any social media. Just look me up. You can find me. So thank you for having me. I love the show. So thank you.